Are you trying to get an edge in the Brisbane property market? Well, today we've got a treat for you. Shane Hiscock is with us today, and he's here to help us get that edge. So he's going to share with us how he helps his home buyer clients get the edge and what he's learnt developing over $75 million of property in Brisbane. How are you today, Shane?
I'm fantastic. How are you, Nathan?
Not too bad.
Good to hear.
Almost nailed it. So, can you share a bit about your background, what you're really passionate about in property?
Yeah, of course. Background. How far back do we go? Just pre-property.
Just your property journey. I think I've heard enough about the IBM stuff.
Yeah. We'll skip that. But I guess that's where it started. I
Pretty
went to
cool
buy
though.
went to buy my first house.
Yeah.
Started inspecting some properties in that process and saw that people paid what they paid and when they paid it, and saw the ability to leverage. But also, being in IT is very intangible, so to speak. So
Yeah.
you might you're selling IT systems or services that you can't often really just go and see. You can't see the change. Property though is being outdoors, and it's getting out and about, which I really enjoyed as well. So those couple of things got me really interested in property to start with, was the ability to leverage that you
Yeah.
could really propel your life forward in a big way by getting involved in property. And then also I think it was just the type of work environment that it was as well that excited me, and being out and about, I guess, were two key things. But as I sort of jumped in and started to learn a bit more about property, I was also going through this uh, journey of wanting to find what it was that I was passionate about and what I really enjoyed doing. I have this um, belief that, and there's a lot of sayings around it that, if you find the thing that you love, do that, because then you'll never really feel like you're working, etc. And we're about to start a family as well. And so I didn't want to be the kind of parent and father that sort of said to my children, follow your passions, follow your dreams, anything's possible, but
Yeah.
I'm just going to work over here doing something I don't like. So that was a really big driver for me as well, just to find a career and something that I was really passionate about. And those couple of things that I mentioned before got me excited about property, and I think just being excited about being able to then not necessarily exchange time for money all of the time, and to create my own destiny was a big thing for me as well. So I think just you know. Running my own business excites me, the freedom that I get from that. But then moving further along the path as we start buying homes for home buyers, the amazing thing about that is that it's very rewarding and very fulfilling. So that's what I do really love about it, is that you're helping people with a massive decision in their lives. And we have clients that scream, laugh, cry, all sorts of things when you find that perfect home for them. And that's a really rewarding part of being in property, and kind of what was missing from me in property development as well. You don't really get that. You don't have a real connection to the person that ends up buying the properties that you develop.
Yeah.
It's very impersonal. Whereas with buyer's agency and buying properties for people, you really get to know somebody, and they really value what you do because you've helped them with something that was really difficult for them. And it just feels really good to be able to help people.
Yeah. Well, I gotta say, like, um, amongst the other buyers agents I've talked to, you really have earned a reputation of taking care of people, and like a bit of yeah,
That's good.
and that's hard to do when you're running a business, and you're actually taking care of people. Do you see that as a bit of like a balance? Like, how do you do that?
I just very strongly believe that if you help enough other people out, you'll get helped out at the end of the day. It will benefit
Yeah.
you in the long run. And I guess I just have a very high um, requirement to be able to sleep at night and to live with the decisions that I make around what I do in business and with property and with with my team, etc. as well. So it's just a high value of mine to do the right thing and to look after those people around you. And that's why I think I approach things in that particular way. It's the number one value in our business. It's do the right thing by people. And for me, that's it's something that I do see isn't done a lot in the industry,
Yeah.
because it does have the allure of the ability to earn high incomes and for it to be glitzy and glammy. But I'm a firm believer that playing the long game is the better approach, and that just because someone may love a property, maybe it has some issues with it. We doing the right thing in my eyes is telling them about those issues and letting them know what the challenges might be with this property down the track. If they still love it and still want to buy it, then I've still done my job.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to just sort of like, oh yeah, let's buy it, let's go, and sugarcoat things. I'm going to just be straightforward and let them know and make sure they feel looked after, and not like we just had to get a deal done to get a commission, because that's just the wrong kind of tone to set for the engagement, and it's the wrong, in my view, just creates the wrong levels of motivations. So that's just I guess who I am as a person, and who the rest of the team here are as well, because of that value that we basically look for in people with our team, is that they're putting others first. And that's to me, I think that is a long game. It's not just, you're not just here for the transaction. And I think whilst it might look like it might take us a little longer to potentially, maybe grow at the pace of some others, that kind of thing, I think it's a solid foundation to build from. You can grow fast on a very wafer thin foundation, and you'll fall over pretty quickly. But I think having a solid foundation of doing the right thing by people and a solid set of values means maybe it takes a bit longer, but it's a better feeling, it's a better outcome at the end of the day, and it extends to not just clients, but to the real estate agent community that we deal with, mortgage brokers, anyone that we come in contact with. We bring that into this, I guess, the way that we operate.
Yeah. You're in high demand. I was trying to get onto you last year, and you were out cycling for a charity. So I guess it extends further than your business. So that's it's great to see. But what people really want to know is, what have you learned? What has developing over $75 million worth of property taught you about buying property, and how does it help people get an edge?
There's so many lessons in this. So you got a lot of hours up your sleeve, but I'll try and pick apart a few different things.
We'll put your website link down the bottom. Don't worry.
Perfect. People can check it out. I think one of the key benefits that, having had that level of experience brings is our ability to break down property into its component parts and work out where its value sits. I see that as being a massive thing that people often get wrong. And it is also, if you think about how people approach the rest of the property transaction, when there isn't a very clear and confident understanding of where the value should sit for the property, it affects the rest of the process. So what I mean by that is, when people are unsure about that, they may be offering too low. They may be not offering. They may be, standing back, being on the fence. They might be missing out on properties because of these things that come into play, because they haven't actually kind of worked out where the value sits. You see it in auctions all the time, right? You see people, pulling up, like talking to each other, they're looking at each other going, what do you think? And what do you think? They haven't done that piece of work first to really understand where the value sits and where it should kind of transact at. And then that causes a bit of confusion, and it causes people to think, oh, these guys are almost at the end of their, ability to buy, so they might miss it. So I think what we do in terms of that value piece is, we'll break it apart in terms of the land, and then the property itself that's sitting on the land. And we're going to look at square meters, size of the land. We're going to look at the slope of the land, the orientation, its elevation. Is it on the high side or the low side? We're going to look at the dimensions of the land. Like, every little aspect of just that can have a difference in the value of what that piece of land is worth, and then compared to another, right? Because we've got to accurately then compare it to what else is sold and consider, well, was that a better street or is it a worse street? I mean, does this one face west at the rear, and does this one face north? Like, people will pay more for the property that has a north-facing backyard than they will for a west-facing backyard. Like, it's really breaking these things right down. And, irregular shaped blocks is generally kind of a deterrent, pretty much. So a lot of people won't look at an irregular shaped block. The slope, like every meter of slope costs you $15,000, $20,000 more in build cost. When you've got to retain, you've got to put steps in the house. So these kind of little bits and pieces become really important in understanding where a value should sit. And then you've got to sit on top of that, the value of the asset. So how big is the house? How many square meters? What features does it have? What level of finishes does it have? And it could be an older home, could be recently built, doesn't really matter, but you kind of need to know how to compare that to other sales that have transacted, because too often people will go, well, oh, this was on 600 square meters and it's a 5-bedroom house with 2 living areas and a pool, and it sold for 2.5 million. We think the house over here is the same, it's got 5 bedrooms, but this house over here is an extra 50 square meter floor plan. Like, okay, well, what's the build value of that? Well, in the current market at that build level, this house is 2.5 to 3,000 square meters to build, so it's worth this much extra, for example, right? So you've got to kind of overlay all of those aspects and then consider the timing of the transactions that you're comparing to as well, because the timing and what was happening in the market's also an important thing. But I learned a lot of this from property development, because you'd have to, when you're looking at a site, you'd have to consider the value of the site. Then you'd have to consider what you're going to build on it and what that costs and what level you need to build at to achieve the outcome that you want at the end, and what are you going to sell it at. So from doing 33 projects all around Brisbane, I learnt approaches and methods to quickly be able to pull together where I felt the values were of all of those different components. And that's something we've taught the team here to do now as well. So that's just one key area, right? So we can go into more, but any thoughts on that, I guess?
Well, my thoughts are, learning about buying property and as an investor is like, do you deal with like manufacturing value out of properties? Because I know there's a lot of older houses around Brisbane sitting on larger blocks, and you hear a lot of, like, I hear the guys that pumped on property talk about it a lot. They love their put a granny flat out the back, or if you can fit 2 driveways down the side and do a double battle axe, that sort of thing. Have you done many projects like that?
I've just known the market so well. I've manufactured 400, 500 grand in a matter of months just by picking the right property and doing zero to it. So I'd rather do as little as I possibly can, because I know what's involved in doing a lot of those activities. And when you become an expert in your market and your areas, you can spot value and you can see trends and things moving. But yeah, of course, I've manufactured a lot of value out of it, because that's exactly what you're doing in property development. If you can't show how you're improving that property and then reselling it, or even just keeping it and revaluing it for a considerable margin, then you don't go into that project. So I have done a lot of that, but most of our purchases these days are for primary residence buyers, so people buying a home to live in for themselves. Owner occupiers, So that makes up around 80% of our client mix, and then the other 20% is for investors. And depending on the investor type, some want to add value straight away and do those kinds of things, but most of the population kind of is looking to build a long-term portfolio generally that we work with, right? So, but certainly I've done a lot of it and understand it very well, but not a lot. Like, if you put 10 people and line them up and said, how many of you would like to start doing some property development? And most sort of 8 out of 10 are more likely to say, no, look, I've just like something like reasonably safe and secure that's going to grow long term, that's going to give me a reasonably good yield. When it comes to the investors that we deal with, the guys that pump on property are obviously very good at what they do, and I think they have that focus on, finding that value add type scenario on property, which is not necessarily our focus.
Well, I think it's important to have your focus if you want to be a specialist. And if you're dealing with owner occupiers, you've got to be really good at customer service, because people got to love their kitchens and love and that sort of thing. I know, with my wife, if she walks into a house, she's got to love the kitchen. Even if we're not cooking that much.
And you'll see different buyers agencies kind of focus on different things because that's their passion. And whilst I use all of what I learned in development to help my home buyers, gives them an edge, because most people haven't, like most buyers agents, haven't developed $75 million worth of property to give that level of detail. But what I found for me is that I really enjoy the owner occupier search, because you are, and some people don't, like some of the investor buyers agents might not like that as much because it's more emotional. It's very much more like you said with your
It's
wife, like
personal.
she's got to love the
Yeah.
kitchen. I love actually trying to find out what that spark is. Like what is it that's like we do things like, I've had clients bring me maps before and say, we want to buy in, here's a map. We've got these streets that we want to buy in. I've gone and found properties in those streets and brought them back, and they've said, sorry, I can't believe I'm going to say this to you, but that's perfect. It's an off-market property. It's exactly where you said, like I said, I wanted it, and you found it for me, but I'm going to have to say, no, I don't like it. And I said, well, why? Why don't you like it? And they said, well, the street's not wide enough. And I remember this particular client quite well. And I said, oh, okay, well, where did you grow up? And he told me the street, and I went, I know that street. I've got friends that live there. I went around there with the tape measure, and I measured the street, and he's right. It was two to 2.5-ish meters wider, the street that he grew up in. So I'm like, great. Now I know what is going to be suitable for him. Like, and usually it often does roll back to something that they've lived in before, or something to do with childhood. And I did the same. Then I asked his wife, I said, well, where did you grow up? Let me find out a little bit about that. And I worked out that where she grew up, and we ended up finding a property that had a really wide street they loved. But it's about finding that spark and what is it that people really love. And when you spend more time with a client, seeing more and more houses, you get to see what they react to, and you get to see what it is that they're searching for. And it's usually a connection to that property. It's a feeling. And I say to the team as well, sometimes we're heading in and maybe we're kicking off a negotiation, and we're always saying, well, hang on, is there a spark, and do they love this property first? Because if they don't love it, and then we're an owner-occupier buyer, then why are we engaging in that conversation? Does that make sense? So, I mean, for investor, it's very much less emotional. When we deal with investors, it's more numbers. So it's a different approach.
Yeah, I really like that. So, like, what's been one of the most challenging things that you've come across in property? Like, I don't know if you're happy to share a personal story, and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, good one. Okay, so I'll tell you where some of my biggest challenges started, and that was it was back when I was doing development, and I was doing a lot of joint venture style development. So I would find the property and put the feasibility study together and help people, and I'd manage the projects and do a profit share on the other side, right?
Yeah.
And I'd attended a training program, property training programs, where they provided a spreadsheet to you that had about 20 different strategies along the bottom in this spreadsheet, all different tabs like subdivisions and splitter blocks and unit blocks and townhouses. And so they had a whole lot of different types of projects along the bottom. And I'd adapted some of those sheets, and we'd done a lot of splitter blocks by this time. So we'd knock a house over, split it into 2 blocks, build 2 houses. So we'd done a lot of those. And perfected that sheet. This one was a subdivision, a renovation, and then sell the vacant block. That was and there was a sheet for it. So we used this sheet for the project. We got to the end of the project, and the client says, we've got no money left. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, this spreadsheet shows that you should, and it wasn't a big profit. A lot of things got delayed in that project with council and different things, but it showed at least a $50,000 profit. And I said, this is crazy. I don't understand why you've run out. It's showing a $50,000 profit. And I went back through the sheet, and I found the cell that wasn't tallying up was the renovation cost cell, and it was $50,000. So herein lies the biggest challenge that I had to work through at this point was, what do I do for that? Do I say, well, sorry, it was the spreadsheet, or do I do something else? And so for me, it was agonizing, but I just had to stick to what I felt was the right thing to do. And as I said to you before, it's about my ability to sleep at night and whether I can feel like I've done the right thing. And I felt responsible, even though I could have blamed the spreadsheet. I could have said it's not my fault, it's these tools that we were using. But at the end of the day, the client trusted me and went off that spreadsheet. So I'd saved money for tax for our business, and I used that $50,000 and paid that client back. So that was a very big challenge because at the time we didn't really have the ability to make that money back up. And that was a extremely, challenging thing in terms of us to try and catch that up over time. And we never really did. Like, it really caused some major issues, but my integrity was intact. I can be strong in the person that I am, and I maintain that kind of responsibility to this day type thing. So it was a really challenging time, but I still think it was the right decision to make, to just do the right thing by people. And those, they've come back to me like 10 years later and asked for some help. And, I've helped their other people out that they've then, mentioned that we're good to work with, kind of thing. So, it certainly had paid off, but at the time it was very hard to do.
Yeah, everything's easier in hindsight, hey?
Mm.
But it's good to see how you tackle things, because everyone's got, when they're buying property, they've got different needs and that sort of thing. So it seems to me that getting the right property is seeing a bit in between the lines sometimes, and seeing, understanding areas, understanding individual properties to get, negotiation power to get in there at the right time. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. I really appreciate it.
No, pleasure.
So what would you tell a first-time home buyer or investor about the process of buying to get an advantage?
Use a buyer's agent.
Use a buyer's agent.
No, of course I'm going to.
That's what they all say.
But I genuinely believe that there's so much that is involved in the process that you can easily kind of get tripped up with. That someone that's had years of experience can actually shortcut.
I relate to that.
Help. But I will sort of suggest some ideas here maybe that could help out. So one thing that I see happen a lot with sort of, I think you mentioned first home buyers, or people just entering the market.
Yeah, people just getting started. Should I entertain the idea of using a buyer's agent, and really, how does it help? I can just go on realestate.com.au.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the thing at the moment, and it changes with the market, but right now you would be noticing there's a very low level of supply. I had a conversation with someone yesterday who asked me the same question. Like, they said, we can handle the on market. And so I guess my question to that though is, and if you're going to consider whether you're using a buyer's agent or not, and their comments were, we've noticed that it's really low, stocks are really low, and that it's super hectic, and there's a lot of buyers out there. So when something comes up, it's very competitive. And so the question then would be, well, how are you going to deal with that competitive situation? Because people just think often with property, it's just about finding the property.
Yeah.
Oh, I found it. But there's the execution of the purchase that follows that. So how are you going to go about that? And I always say, well, what's your approach to making offers? Is it an offer and hope strategy? Or just so you just put the offer in and see what happens? How do you come up with your price? Like, how do you land on the value? Do you have a relationship with the agent that helps you get more information, for example? Do you have a relationship with other people in that marketplace that can help you get more information? Yeah. There's a whole lot more, and people, I do think they need to go out and try it first though, right? And be in the marketplace to kind of experience it. And then they'll have some sense of how difficult or not it might be. And, so obviously not everyone needs a buyer's agent. Lots of people do transact, but for many, it's a real challenge. But if I was to give a tip when you're just there by yourself, something that I see that sort of people do a lot is they think that the way to negotiate is to go in and just start knocking everything about the house and see how bad it is. Oh, this is bad and that's bad and I need to fix this. And they feel like that's their key negotiation skill, for example.
Yeah.
I would suggest that's probably not a great idea. First thing it shows to the real estate agent is that you really like the property, like straight away, because you don't spend the time to go through and pick it to pieces if you don't like it. You just move on and go to the next property, right? The second thing I would say about that, and why I think it's a mistake that buyers coming into the market often do, is that let's say you do put an offer in, and the real estate agent maybe has a couple of offers, and sitting down with the seller, and then the seller's saying, well, tell me about these buyers. Well, these guys over here put this offer in, and they were saying they don't like this about your house. The walls are a disgusting color. Who chose the tiles in the kitchen? They're just like they're so bad. I'm like, do you actually think that the seller of that house is then going to actually feel favourable towards your offer because they've probably loved that house. They've probably lived in it for a long time. You're smarter and better off to work out what the things are that you don't like and keep it to yourself. Put your offer in and say you absolutely love the property. It's beautiful. It's perfect for you because the agent knows and the seller knows that the right buyer for their property is the person that loves it. The person that loves it is going to pay more for it. So that's just a little tip that I would suggest that new buyers can work through. And I think the other thing would be, just do a lot of research, like go in and out of a lot of properties and then monitor them and then see what the results are and how long they take to sell and what price they sell for.
Yeah.
And then do that in your core marketplace for a few months at least if you really want a good handle on the values of the properties. That can also help you as well if you're that entry buyer.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. That's a lot. That's a lot to take in. So,
well, that's like a 1,000th of the kind of level of detail that we can go to. But yeah.
Yeah, so I guess what you're saying is, they can go out by themselves and look for property, but they're not going to. It's going to take them. It's going to be a fairly steep learning curve, and I think the reality is people can only do so much every weekend, and a lot of people just have Saturdays to look for property. And you're doing this every day. Do you work 5 or 6 days a week?
6.
6.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're exactly right. We're doing it every day. We're constantly being contacted by agents with off-market opportunities as well, or pre-market, getting in early, getting in maybe when they're doing the photos or the staging or something like that. So there's a lot more out there than most people think as well. There are a lot more opportunities than they can see on the internet. And I guess everybody else is looking on the internet as well. So if you want to stand out, then I think get access to more properties or get in earlier. But then you need the right tools I call it, you need the context to be confident. So you need the right level of information to be able to then be confident to make your moves and to move forward on something. A lot of people do anyway, right? So that's hard to do when let's say it's you and your partner or something like that, and you're not experts in that field. It kind of becomes an opinion-based discussion between the two of you rather than a factually based sort of like, well, this is how it is and this is where it's going to sit, that comes from a professional who knows, what's going on and where the market should sit. And lots of people go on the merry-go-rounds. They get told, oh, what's your budget? Oh, it's this. Oh, you should definitely come to the property then. When it's completely 300-400 grand over maybe their budget, but the agent's just doing their job and getting more people there to view the property. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that it causes people a lot of frustration. They keep going along to properties or auctions that are potentially way outside their budget. They start to form an opinion that the market's cooked. Everyone's overpaying for everything. But the reality is that they're just focusing themselves in the wrong areas because they don't quite have the expertise to sort of work out, well, no, it's actually really worth this. We shouldn't be even looking at that, for example, or whatever that might be.
Yeah. So you're saying that it does like quite a bit of like reading and analysis to like get a hold of the market.
Yeah.
Yeah. I when I was looking into what is a buyer's agent, I did hear I don't know where it was, but apparently buyer's agents sort of started in Australia when a sales agent saw that there was disgruntled buyers, so they decided to work on the buyer side and find people at inspections or auctions that were they could see that they weren't quite they couldn't find the house they're looking for. They didn't know how to look, so he chased them down. And sometimes it was this person said they would find the person with the nicest car. And then, but the most upset person with the nicest car.
Right.
Yeah. But anyway, I think so it's definitely I think with some agencies, I come from a marketing background. They say they buy and sell, but historically they like a lot of big agencies haven't done much with buyers at all. They might, at the very least, they might market some things to them, but because they're not making commission from them, they're not prioritized. They're forgotten. And
Correct.
I was talking to an agent, who's a sales agent in Cairns, and and yeah, and he was basically saying to me, "Oh, don't be a buyer's agent. They'll just waste your time." And I was like, "Well, aren't people important? Can't we do, you know, if they need help and there's and the market's tough, you know." Yeah. So um and I have heard other agents say, "Oh, how are you going to make money as a buyer's agent?" You know, that sort of thing.
They'll be the people that are going to knock something and, say that it doesn't work, but then, the best answer is making it work.
Yeah.
The fact is that people are getting busier, their lives are getting busier, the
Mm,
property market is getting harder and harder to navigate. And buyer's agency really isn't even at a tipping point here in Australia yet.
yeah.
There's still a very small percentage of people that even know about what the service is and then use the service. So I think there's quite a lot of room for growth, really.
Yeah, for sure. And I couldn't help but look up on Google. It's very underserved. Um, yeah, so there's quite a few people looking for buyers agents, and it's very underserved if you compare it to the sales side of the property market.
Exactly.
Which means that people do see the value of a buyer's agent. So, yeah,
Yeah. Well, we're buying hundreds of properties a year for people, so we kind of get it. We know that there's value for people, and I think it's really great because it's often that people do come in and sort of they're not aware of the service. Once we talk them through how we work and what we do, they go, "Oh wow, we can actually see the value in this service and how it would benefit us now." So, and that just kind of then tends to grow, right? We have a lot of people who refer their friends and family to us
yeah,
because then they've gone, well, we've had this experience and it was fantastic. So, if you guys are struggling to buy, why don't you have a chat with them? What have you got to lose? So I think the more and more that people experience what it's like, then it can only grow.
yeah. And talking to more and more buyers agents in this podcast, I I realized that a lot of people aren't aware of the amount of like data that's out there that's being collided with, because we're in the information age. This isn't the the 80s or 70s where we'll just have to talk to mum or dad about buying a property and rely on their knowledge. There is a lot of information out there that some of it can be overwhelming, but it can really help people make a good decision. As long as
100%.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But a lot of the information's dated though, right?
Okay.
So the on the ground information that helps you make better decisions is you get that information, you gather that from being on the ground, seeing what's happening. We're already starting to see in this market prices go well above estimates or asking prices, and so that'll come out in the media in 3 weeks, 2 or 3 months probably. It'll be like, oh,
Yeah.
Brisbane's had great growth for the last quarter. It's like, well, we're already in it now. So, so we're kind of always ahead of the curve in terms of up to the minute information, which is invaluable really in making those purchasing decisions.
Yeah. Yeah, that's gold. That's really good. So if someone wanted to work with you, or just simply have a chat with you about, uh, you know, just to leverage some of your knowledge and expertise, what's a good place to start?
Our website will be the best place to start. So that's
Yep.
locatebuyersagency.com.au. And there's a lot of information on there if you're just looking for some general information. There's
Yep.
also the opportunity to reach out and contact us on there as well. And then,
Is it .com.au?
yeah,
Not
.com.au.
okay.
That would
Locate.
be the best way.
Yep. Oh, no worries.
Buyers, locate buyers agency.
Locate buyers agency.com.au. I hope that's you.
Locate, is it LOCATE buyers agency?
Locate buyers agency. The 5-star rated property buyers agent, Brisbane Trusts.
Correct. We don't
Oh,
call
look.
ourselves everyone calls themselves the number one buyers agency in Brisbane. So I really don't see how everyone can be number one, but
Oh, yeah, I don't understand it either.
we like to focus on the client. So I am proud of the fact that we get a lot of 5-star reviews, because that to me just they're the people that we're here to help, and their feedback is more important than what I say about what we do.
Unmatched client service, exceptional price outcomes, and access to hidden off-market properties. I love it. Yeah, it's good. So, yeah, talking to you about off-market properties, they are hard to come by. So, yeah, definitely have a chat. Have a chat with Shane. And are you on social media?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So there's a Locate Buyers Agency Instagram page, a Facebook page, a LinkedIn page, TikTok account, and then there's Shane Hiscock as my page for Instagram, and yeah, that's kind of the main one. And obviously LinkedIn as well, the personal one on Facebook as well. So yeah.
Beautiful. So I'll leave these links below. Shane,
Excellent.
thanks for coming on to the show
My
with us
pleasure.
today. Yeah, it's been great. You have a wealth of knowledge, and I like how you balance that with passion for working with people.